Kevin, you play and build characters that have been pegged both by yourself and others as characters that redefine stereotypes. Do you feel a responsibility to consistently live outside the box with the characters you're developing, the characters you're creating, the persona that you play, the persona that you are, because of that reputation? Do you feel a pressure to do so? And how is that defining how you're building out storylines or how you are building out the version of you that gets to be on television?
Yeah, I do feel certain responsibility, especially when I speak on a podcast or on stage or building a character, because the one thing that I realized growing up is that these portrayals, how Asians were portrayed a long time ago from outdated stereotypes and tropes of humans, were really harmful to men growing up about their self-esteem, their perspective of what they could do in life. And so now these days, I really find that it's very important for me to not play or be a part of a stereotypical TV show, movie, media.
Sure.
So I find that even today, I still see a lot of it. And I don't want to partake in a lot of it. And I've kind of hit this boundary where I'm like, I really want to keep acting, but I also want to be true to myself.
Yeah.
How much of that should I align myself to? And will it keep me going further in my career? Because it was really easy just to be myself.
So for me personally, one of the things I really struggle with is that as a society, we need, or we've decided we need these definitions, right? And even when it comes to our work, naming you a director, a producer, an actor, reality star, all these different things. And I personally find that although there is a lot of joy in representing, you know, the characters that we play, we build the people who we are day in, day out, sometimes that box and even building that box of representation can become stifling.
Totally. And I'm feeling it from the community recently. I feel like we're becoming too journalistic, too much like documentarians, too much like historians, like this is how it's supposed to be. And I feel that we're kind of, creativity needs a little bit of freedom. And I just feel like we're being a little bit less creative these days because we're so trying to get it right.
Yeah.
And gotta tell you, it's not always right. But the beauty is we get to go outside of all these boundaries. So that's what I want to see more of.
Sometimes as storytellers, we have to be the people who take everyone outside those boundaries.
I like how you whispered that.
Today we explore the difference between unscripted and scripted storytelling with Kevin Traitors, a dynamic presence renowned for his diverse roles in reality TV and film. Kevin rose to fame with his candid portrayal in Netflix smash hit show Bling Empire and as the lead in the romantic comedy Asian Persuasion. Kevin also appears on the game show The Traitors, which is currently the #1 unscripted series across all streaming platforms in the United States. So storytellers, join me now as we welcome Kevin to Storyteller Studio. Welcome to Storyteller Studio, Kevin.
Thank you. First time here?
We are so happy to have you, and I think specifically because you represent not only fictional storytelling, but this other medium of storytelling, which is unscripted and is indeed a method of storytelling. We're going to delve a little bit into that, but I want to start back with bringing the audience kind of into how your world was formed and how you saw the world, specifically being adopted by, first of all, just being adopted, but then being adopted by a German-Irish family and having your Korean roots influencing you in whatever way it did as a child. How do you remember the first storytelling experiences you had and the way your lens was different as an adoptee? And was it also different, or did you realize the differences culturally that early on?
Well, it's funny because I think the first thing that came to my mind is that everybody always told me what I should do, how I should feel about being adopted. I felt like they were writing my story for me.
Wow.
It was very like, oh, well, shouldn't you know who your parents are? I'd want to feel like I know who my real parents are. And I'm like, man, I know who my real parents are.
Sure.
It'd be something different if I want to go see them and find my genetic ancestry, all
Mm-hmm.
that stuff. Cool. But most adoptees are very disappointed when they find who their real parents are anyway. There's a disconnect. Then they're like, oh, you should go to Korea, to your hometown, your everything. And I've done that. And I feel like there's even more of a disconnect because you are Korean and there's an expectation that you have to speak Korean. I mean, even today's roles, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you have to speak, if you're Korean, you got to speak Korean and you got to speak English pretty well. I mean, gone are the days, it seems like, for Asians especially, that you could just learn. Like, we have to naturally be gifted at martial arts or
That's so
kung
stifling
fu,
too,
right?
though.
Yeah.
Like we're really in this space where we're all individuals, and I think what's so unique is individuals come into a world perspective through their own experiences, and no two
Yes.
people's experiences are the same. So, to ever say that they should be is, as a creative, that directly stifles the entire experience of being able to wonder what other worlds are. For you, when you were a kid, was there a first moment where you remember really leaning or gravitating towards story and falling in love with that and that process?
Yeah, so ironically, comic books have always
Comic
been, yeah, my
books.
first storytelling experience.
I love that.
I
What
used,
comic? What was your first comic? Do you
oh
remember?
man, my first comic book must have been like, it's kind of cheesy, but it's like probably an Archie comic book.
No, mine was, I
Or
mean, where did you grow up?
I grew up back in Philadelphia.
Okay. How
Yeah.
did you end up with Archie comics?
Well, it was like Archie and Superman with Yoo-Hoo. Like they had this weird crossover, and I saw.
Were your parents from Germany?
No, so they're from Pennsylvania.
And they had Archie comics? That's
Yeah,
great.
it was like kind of weird. Like I those are the first comic books I remember. They weren't superhero yet.
No.
But what I remember about comic books is that I loved how when it eventually got into superheroes, they were fighting for things that they stood up for, even though other people hated them for being different. And that really struck me
Resonated.
in my core, and I wanted to draw superheroes for a long time.
Oh, I love that.
And I thought my first passion was going to be a comic book artist because I was going to tell these stories, right? Little did I know back then there's writers that do that. I thought it was all artists. But this is when I was really young. And then I realized I wasn't very good at drawing. So I was going to go into bodybuilding and start looking like a superhero, which then led into more public speaking. And I got to tell you, public speaking, doing a TED Talk or going on
Your
platform.
TED Talk is so good.
Thank you. And that was,
If you guys haven't got a chance, you have to go watch Kevin's TED Talk. You're a great speaker.
thank you. And it really, what I think is important about my speaking is that these are real life experiences. These are real meaningful conversations I want the rest of the world to know about. And that's my first time I really felt like a storyteller going on stage and sharing my own life experience and seeing it resonate with other Asians.
Let's go back a little bit. So you find this kind of love for comic books. And the reason I was so excited that it was Archie comics, because Archie comics a lot of times are people who grew up with foreign backgrounds are big in Archie comics.
I did not know that,
Yeah,
actually.
all over Asia, all over Europe. Archie was just so big. Yes, it was big in the United States, but it's really big amongst children of immigrants. For you specifically, you fall in love with like this book world. I understand totally the heroes that you're seeing, and they're these unlikely heroes, and why that would resonate. Do you have someone at this point in your life when you're like, when do you decide this is something I might want to do? I might want to go into modeling. I might want to go into acting. I might want to go into writing stories. And do you have someone who's like, this is a great idea? Or was it like,
Yeah. No, actually, I do remember this. His name was Daniel Liu. Well, actually, it still is Daniel Liu. He was one of the first models back then signed by Ford.
oh, wow.
And I remember being, I think I was 24 or 25, sitting on the couch at my gym that I was personal training at. And my client, who knew so much about my background and how I felt as an Asian guy growing up and just not seeing much in TV at that time. I think it was just Lucy Liu at that time, taking over the TV realm. And he's like, look at this guy. it's possible. He's like, you
Yeah.
always talked about wanting to be a model or doing acting and stuff. Like, this guy is the first, so I think it's a good opportunity. Then the financial market crashed and training was kind of going to crap. So I was like, oh, let me make that move. And so he was really my first inspiration, seeing somebody like me go and do something like that.
And your parents and your friends, were you sharing that you were thinking about doing something like this?
No, I wasn't very open back then speaking about things. I think I went the typical jock route, which is like, I want to be a professional baseball player.
Before this moment when you see someone who looks like yourself and then you decide this is something you can pursue, did you see yourself as characters that you read in books, that you watched on TV, or was it a othering process where you were like, oh, I could never be those roles?
So I really took a page out of Tyson Beckford. Tyson Beckford was another model who I saw in acting movies, and he's actually part Asian, which is cool.
Yeah.
And so I took a page out of his book. I was like, okay, if I can do well in modeling, might be able to jump me up to the next platform, such as acting. And so he was really my role model into that with Daniel Liu, just knowing that I actually look like him, in the sense I'm Asian, and he made it possible. And so I thought, why don't we just go into this?
You talk a lot about just the reality of realizing how you were perceived by others. But I want to talk about how that directly affected you as a storyteller in these early days of modeling, in these early days of deciding a path to get to Hollywood.
Yeah.
Were there choices that you make or stories you were telling yourself that directly affected your art?
Yeah, totally. Like, I've always been a believer in this pain, this failure, this feeling that I was having back then when I was pursuing acting and modeling. Because there were lots of failures, like just no work for a long time.
For sure.
And so I knew there was a reason for all of this, and that I wanted to come out on top and be able to share my story of overcoming these challenges, especially as an Asian guy, because there just weren't that many back then. Now it seems pretty like kind of cliche, but there's many now who speak about these things. Like Simu Liu is one of them. And so I find that I always lean towards that. I was like, if I haven't seen anybody that I could be call them as a role model, I'm sure I'm one of many that don't have that. And so I wanted to at least open the doors up for other role models or other children or other kids like me to say like, oh, I can do something like that. I don't have to be a doctor or a lawyer if I don't want to be. No shame in it if you just don't want to be. I don't have to be a personal trainer or a bodybuilder if I don't want to be, which is a real hard life. I did that for many years. It was a really hard life.
I love to learn where people's inspiration to become storytellers comes from. And I totally understand and resonate with this idea that, you had a mixed identity growing up and trying to understand the world through characters.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's beautiful. It was beautiful that you were able to pursue something that allowed you that exploration. Within that, you ended up on a reality show, as we all know. What did you think your first role was going to be in the storytelling world?
It's funny you say this because I actually had no idea my greatest character was going to just be myself.
Yeah.
And I think that was super, super cool. Like because I couldn't see myself being a superhero at the time, even though I've always wanted to be. I think every kid wants to be at some point.
Sure.
And then you just see that it's probably not going to happen. I mean, I literally quit acting for a little while, for 2 years back in Philadelphia, for many reasons. I mean, like there was no success for a long period of time. There's no acting or super creative storytelling when it comes to TV and film in Philly. And I was thinking about leaving it all until, this show caught wind and brought me along. And by the grace of God, I was able to get on this show because this is when I knew nothing about storytelling. Like, I had no idea there's a thing called development, which means that it's not sold yet. It's no guarantee. You're still trying to develop, right? And this show is in development.
Yeah.
Like, literally, I got interviewed by the producers, and they're like, "Come to LA if you want to be in the show." And I moved to LA. Then I'm like, When are we filming?" And then they're like, "Well, we got to sell it first." And I was like, "Oh my gosh,
Sure.
what is this?" And then we got lucky, but I had no idea that this would be such an impactful show and it would reach so many people.
As someone who creates for film and television, and as someone who I grew up on the stage, and then from stage writing for television and writing for short form, and then coming to Hollywood and writing for brands in between. I remember the first time I was exposed to reality. I actually was exposed to reality back in Ohio. They tried to do like a local reality show, and I was on it. In the
You were on a
format.
reality
Yeah,
show?
when I was
Wow.
a kid.
In Ohio?
In Ohio, and that was when I was doing entertainment reporting for Fox News locally. And then I ended up coming out to Los Angeles, and I had a whole group of friends who just like lived in that world. And I think one of the most intriguing things was learning. And many people still to this day, I think the cat's out of the bag, but they don't fully know that there is story building and world building in unscripted.
100%.
So you get thrown into this world that is called reality, where you are quote unquote playing yourself. How surprised and how inspired creatively were you as you realized that this was world building and that there was story involved?
I thought it was a great introduction to Hollywood storytelling because it was something easy for me to get into. Like, they just said, "Hey, share what's going on in your life." And I was like, "Let me tell you, you're the first person that wants to hear me," you know? And so I think for not having a voice for so long growing up, because I would always share about my life and just say, "Hey, there's a little bit of discrimination when it comes to dating
Yeah.
or landing a film or TV role," and people just said, "Shut up, you're making it worse," you know, all this stuff like that. It was always shutting me off. And then finally, when people were like, "Well, share your story, tell me what it's about. What would you like to do?" You know, because that's what executive producers do. They say, "What's
Sure.
going on in your life?" And then you tell them everything for like 3 hours. And then they go to another room and start saying like, "Well, should we document these things that already happened, or should we document what's going to happen?" And I felt so much freedom in that because I just wanted my story to be out there, to be heard. So that was a very good start into Hollywood.
So as you saw that they were threading together storylines, did that affect the way that you were building out what you wanted to share as you got
Yeah.
deeper and deeper into the production process?
Yeah, and so that's why I realized, like, wow, these people are just kind of taking my own thing anyway and not giving me a EP credit or story by credit on any of this stuff. And it's
Sure.
my story. Like,
Sure.
a lot of it is real. What's not real is obviously like just being planted in the middle of this crazy rich Asian life. But it's like that was me living my true self out there.
That conversation really opened, Bling Empire opened this conversation about representation in media that we touched upon, a little bit. And so now you, as someone who has other aspirations, you're acting, you're writing, you have things that you're building, you became made in many ways, part of the poster children
This
for
is what it's like to be made.
for Asian representation. No. So I would love to know like how you felt going into then creating your own stories and your own worlds and the next characters, because you as a cast basically were carrying this storyline.
Yeah, I mean, I felt very more like I could do this because as I told more stories to the producers and it aired, I was like, "Oh, I'm actually not bad at this."
Yeah.
And then actually, I mean,
You're
I have,
really good at it.
yeah, thanks. But
You're welcome.
I also have a lot of friends who are storytellers too in Hollywood and writers and creatives, and we would talk. And you know, obviously, I'd see some of them like put up movies or TV shows that definitely sprinkled a lot of my own life
Sure.
in there. So I realized,
You were literally affecting the way people were telling other stories about Asian representation through your characters.
So I wanted to do that for myself, and I felt like, okay, this is the time to do it now.
This episode was brought to you in partnership with Little Black Tux. Little Black Tux is my go-to when I need a timeless look. Whether I'm speaking on a film panel, walking a red carpet, or need a bold, sophisticated look for a photo shoot, Little Black Tux has me covered. Little Black Tux isn't just a clothing company, they're a company with a story, a strong why. And you know I love a good story. They're breaking boundaries and creating clothing that empowers women with versatile, upscale options. I love my Little Black Tux, and I know you will too. Can we talk a little bit about these worlds converging now? So you come out here and you have this experience, and you also get a chance to reflect back on your upbringing and growing up with different roots. Of course, all this is part of this process as you're going through this story. So now when you're looking at what you want to develop, what you want to put into the world, where do you feel you are drawing inspiration for characters?
I think it all, like drawing inspiration always comes back from childhood. And even like teenage years, right? I feel like a lot of stuff is drawn from there. And just finding myself, my identity. I mean, I guess even today, I was just journaling a little bit and writing. And I'm like, man, the transition of my life in the last 7 years has been unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, I recently just came back from Hong Kong and Singapore. And it's my second time. And the first time I went, I was nothing. I was just a model. And I'm like, man, the life is so different. Like even the people, the way they treat me is different. The way they even date is different now.
Was Bling very big in China as well?
It was big everywhere in Asia especially. So when I go back there, I realized, wow, media has played a good impact on these countries. You know, when I went to Singapore, there was no Crazy Rich Asians. And now they're proud of it. And they're proud to be Singaporean. Whereas like 12 years ago, a lot of Singaporeans actually weren't proud to be Singaporean.
Yeah.
And now they are. And I just say like, wow, my job is really fulfilling when it comes to that. So I see this crossroad of like, I'm drawing my inspiration from the pain that I used to have and still do probably. Chip on the shoulders for things, you know, like I think that's why I really got into more developing more production and going out there trying to raise money and learning all these things from having a beverage company at the time. And like all these different things have led me from learning and telling my own story.
And I think you were, I think that you specifically got to be a redefining character in this unscripted space, because I think it was the first time that we had kind of a paradox character where you were the grounded individual in a larger cast, and you were bringing a reflection, which we see in film and television, in scripted often, where you'll create a mirror character that serves as a mirror to the world. And the producers chose to bring you in as a mirror character that was like a mirror to this rich tapestry that Bling was set up. And you get to be the dose of reality or the relatable individual. And I'm sure that you're going to continue to see, and you have seen, a bunch of characters you spoke of that shown up on film and television that have been representative of you. When you see those characters, what's that feel like?
It's bittersweet, right? Because obviously I think it's great. There's always this saying, if I could help one person, that's all worth it. But I think I'm in a point in my life right now that one person hasn't paid my bills yet. So I'd really like it if it could start paying my bills a little bit more. But it is fulfilling. I think there's a lot of change and a lot more opportunity now. And I think right now it's just about me hitting the ground, running with it, and creating, and not looking just in film and TV for me. Like I said, I'm getting into comic books because back in my childhood, doing more. Maybe I have to accept reality TV is a great space for me, you know, even though it's been hard.
Sure.
And that's a journey for me because really my first love was acting. It wasn't reality TV. And then reality TV just keeps popping up. I mean, like, look, another Emmy Award-winning show.
Yeah,
right?
number one on Peacock.
Right. So I was like, well, whatever it is I'm supposed to be doing, I must be doing it right because more of it just keeps appearing. But at the same time, I would still like to get my other stories out there that are scripted.
What do you think it is about your personality that just attracts so many fans and so many people?
I think it's because it's kind of like you just don't see many Asian guys out there on a reality show. And just being like one of the guys, or like having that unfiltered perspective on what's going on in the world. And I think as Asians, we always say this, but we're pressed to not speak
Yeah.
or to have an opinion or stand up for ourselves.
You've spoken about the importance of strong relationships and helping others find true happiness. How do you find that philosophy has informed your world and the characters that you both played and built and the persona that you represent?
Yeah, in real life, I still stand by that. It's like you should help. If you are super lost in life, because this helped me, I literally started just thinking about other people and how I can help them. And that's how the TED Talk happened and the documentaries I did and then Bling. And, Bling really was a passion of love for me.
Yeah.
It was a project of love because I knew that reality TV was such a huge audience. And it's an
Sure.
audience that need to see Asians.
Absolutely.
And I just knew it was such a big impact. And then the response was great. Like I had so many girls who were dating Asian guys like hit me up and say, "Man, my boyfriend speaks about this, and I'm so glad you're out there." Or just like girls just saying, "I didn't know Asian guys were like that." I was like, "Well, what are you watching?" And so it was just such a big impact that I can't take that back. And like I said, maybe unscripted is a different forte. I just wish it had a little bit more respect when it came to TV and film. It seems to be the trashy of trash, and sometimes
You mean that unscripted people have
Yeah.
a device against it? Well, that's
Yeah.
why I think it's because people don't fully understand it. And I hear you. Like, again, like we look at it as a storytelling format, and I don't know that people fully understand what goes into it. How about could you walk us through, whether it's Traitors or whether it's Bling, what the process is creating an episode for talent on one of those shows? You spoke a
Yeah.
little bit about it. You walk in, you tell your whole week to the producer.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through that format and how it comes into full fruition?
Sure. So I usually speak to a showrunner about my whole life for like 3 hours, 5 hours, and then there's a lot of notes taken, and they come to a room and see how my story relates to other people in the show, or what's going on in your life. Who are you dating? Like all that kind of things. And then they literally just go and shoot for 2 months straight. And then throughout the whole year, they start doing pickups because life goes on. There might be something really interesting going on. I mean, I remember I call up production.
Tell everyone what a pickup is.
A pickup is just a shot, a day to film again that wasn't scheduled, so you can tell a better story.
Yeah.
Or
to fill out the story.
Right, to build it out, or to redo a story that just didn't really make sense. So there were a lot of those in
Sure.
Bling because
They're real time putting together what the storyline will be.
yeah, and the way I like to say is like it's more like a documentary at one point.
Yeah.
Because you really are just documenting people's lives.
Sure.
And a lot of it was my life. And so what's great about Bling, at least, is that the producers were really about Asian representation and just like, oh, you're the guy for Asians, The Traitors wasn't so much like that, actually.
Yeah, this is a game show
It's
format.
a game show. You don't really tell your story.
No.
I found that to be very challenging
Yeah, why?
because I'm a storyteller.
Yeah.
I'm not a game player, Unless I can tell my story and my story has to do with the game, but with a game like The Traitors, which is about lying, deceit, and murder and finding out who the murderers are.
For those of you back home who are listening, it's kind of like playing Mafia.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the game Mafia, but live on TV with all the commentary.
And you don't leave.
And you don't leave.
Unless you die. But it was seriously like so challenging because then that had to do with strategy and gameplay. And I was like, man, this is not my world that I normally come from.
Yeah, it's a very different format.
Very different format. That is a different skill in competition, is very different than where I come from. Just like it's a different skill to be able to live your life and tell your story, which I know this sounds really weird, but everybody thinks they're really good at it.
Yeah.
My producers say it. They're like, he gets submissions from millions of families thinking they're so interesting, and it's just not.
Sure.
But I think what made Bling unique is that it was the first time that an Asian perspective was put into the forefront.
Do you have a storyline either within one of these two shows or in your movie, Asian Persuasion? Do you have a storyline, and it can be multiple, that you just fell in love with? You were like, I wish we could spend more time on this, or something that was very memorable, and you were done. You were like, that is going to be a lightning episode.
When I went to Paris to reunite with Devon, my girlfriend now to this day, that we broke
Who
up.
we love.
Yeah, we broke up because I was just getting sober, and we had so many great feelings after that. And by the way, it was still today one of the best episodes I've watched and been a part of ever.
Falling in love real time.
Yeah, and we were really excited to be able to keep telling that story afterwards. Unfortunately, we weren't able to, but we still want to be able to somehow, because we definitely know there's a lot of couples out there who suffer through someone with addiction who won't get help, and just want to let them know that it's possible.
I love that episode of you guys. I want to go a little bit into this third format of gaming that you've ended up in. And you talked about how it's a little bit difficult to really expose yourself as a character within that format. Can you walk us through a day on one of those types of sets? What's that like?
So the Traitors was filmed, I believe, in 3 weeks. So just alone, that shooting schedule is intense. It's intense.
Insane.
And it's like 10 or 11 episodes. I think it's 11. And then you literally have 3 weeks, whereas like Bling had, 8 to 10, and you
With all the
had like a whole
pickups at the
year.
time.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, the time.
So it was really intense. Well, I got to tell you, though, the production company that ran that was a well-oiled machine. Like, they literally picked you up on time to go to, like, your confessionals, which is just sitting in front of the computer's or screen talking to somebody behind. Woke you up on time, like, got you to the missions on time, like, did the round, like, everything was just so timed out. But it's a very long day.
Can you delve a little bit deeper into what is going through your head as a creator when you're trying to get in those moments of authenticity, and you are, of course, a storyteller at heart, and you're trying to get these pieces in? What is that? What are the struggles there? What is the and what's going through your head?
So I come from Meisner technique from acting. So Meisner technique is about being in the moment. They also have these exercises where you're trying to knock on the door and you come in. And so reality TV docuseries works great.
Wait, hold on. Finish the exercise, because not everyone knows. You knock on the door.
You knock on the door and you go in, and you're just repeating each other's sentences to stay present in the moment. And then you're eventually able to, like, get away from repeating each other's sentences, because it's about listening.
Absolutely.
So you're just sounding out what the other person's saying. Then you get into an argument, or you start crying, or nothing happens, whatever the moment is.
Sure.
It's all about just whatever the truth of that moment is, moment by moment, living in it truthfully. Doing a Meisner exercise would, like, for you, Joshua, if your audience doesn't know, it's like I knock, I'm like, and then you observe me and make an observation or something. So,
Kevin, you're wearing a gray shirt.
I'm wearing a gray shirt.
Kevin, you're wearing a gray shirt.
I know I'm Kevin. I am wearing a gray shirt.
That's a gray shirt.
This is a gray shirt.
It's a long sleeve gray shirt.
It's not like your green dress.
Do I have to keep saying the same thing?
No, you can talk about my green dress, what I just said about the green dress. So you just play back and forth. It's moment to moment, and it's silly, because then you could be like, stop saying I'm wearing a green dress. I'm so tired. Whatever your emotion is at the moment. And so the thing with docuseries, it works great, but the competition reality show doesn't work so great.
Yeah.
Because if you're really pissed off in the moment, or you're suspicious of somebody, you need to, like, kind of play
can't give it away.
Can't give it away.
Yeah.
And I can't be like, you know why I thought you were suspicious killers? Because back then, like, a Russian guy would beat me up, and he would call me Ching Chang Chong, and be like, you can't get into that detail because it has nothing to do with the game. You know, you can't express yourself.
I love how your brain has created a whole separate storyline based on some superhero who got beat up by Russian mobsters.
Exactly.
And you're sitting there on Traitors trying to inject it. You're like, I can do this.
And I can't, because then they're like, okay, let's go back. You know, like actually production never interfered, which is great with our stories or whatever, being an investigator at Traitors. It was really cool how they just let everything go. But from somebody who doesn't play games that much, I like to watch games, but I don't like to play games. And unless it's like car games, then it's fun. But I literally had the hardest time relating to people because you don't even have time to really get to know people, because you have such a quick time to like figure out who is the person killing everybody, who's going to get murdered this morning, and then you talk about it, and then you don't really get into each other's lives. So it's hard to create that connection with other people.
So you have found yourself a great audience within reality and these competitions, and you've talked about it, but you also have this great love of acting. So when you start pursuing these stories that you're actually creating, do you feel like you need to bring some of this other world that you've been a part of into these characters? Or do you feel free to create whatever?
I did in the beginning feel like I had to literally copy and paste this character into a scripted thing. But then people are like, well, we actually just watched that already on Bling Empire or something, or your YouTube channel, whatever. And I was like, oh, that's right. Like I'm a creative. I have freedom.
Yeah.
So what I've done is, like, for comic books especially, or film, I take past experiences, and this is where I know myself the best. I know how to create like a world or characters, but then when it comes to the actual writing part, I have partners in it
Sure.
that help it out, and they come in with their own perspectives, or other writers. And so I feel so much freedom when I have a great idea, great concept, a great story, and I have other people to work with to help tell the story.
And each of those stories has a little part of you in it.
Oh, all of them do.
So you're in there no matter what.
Totally.
You're in there no matter what. I want to talk a little bit about this discovery of character and these little pieces of you. And you've talked about your childhood being so important to building out those characters. Are there things you haven't explored yet? Like, you had such a layered childhood. Even when I was trying to introduce you, just, adoption is one thing, coming from a different cultured background, growing up in America is a whole nother thing. When you come from a different culture, rediscovering your Korean roots is a different thing. Is there something that you're really looking forward to exploring? And if so, can you walk us through how you would tackle a subject matter that you're really close to, and how you see that exploratory phase as something that, as a creative, as something that's growing within you?
Yeah, it's some of the stories I'd love to tell more of. I mean, I'm doing it now, but I'd love to start more of. So I'm adopted, as you know, and a lot of the adoptee stories are from a woman's perspective.
That's
a
interesting.
woman's point of view when it comes to finding identity, when it comes to finding love.
Wow. I
and
didn't realize that.
Yeah, and I find that I'd really like to start telling more about men falling in love, pursuing love, because that was my whole thing. Is like, I grew up a certain way. Women rejected me because I looked a certain way, and I wasn't white, or I wasn't black, whatever race I was pursuing, you know. And then I felt inferior. And so I wanted to also break those boundaries of love and dating, and then addiction gets in my way. And then so I finally found love again. I mean, my whole life has been about acceptance and love. When I really think about it, I actually think most men build businesses and entrepreneurs because they want acceptance and love as well. They want recognition, which is a form of acceptance and love. And I find that what's disappointing what I see is there is so many adoptee stories, but it's all from the woman's perspective. And I'm trying to break that. So it's not just a gender thing, like
Yeah, no, it's an
only women are
exploration thing.
adopted, you know? Like,
Sure.
so I want to have that side of the story out there because I know a lot of men feel very similar to me. Where like, hey, a lot of Korean adoptee men want to be seen and heard too.
I love that you're exploring telling that story. I think it's a perspective that needs to be shared with this world. We're reaching a point in our show. It's one of my favorite parts of our show where we do a character analysis
Oh, okay.
of the person we're interviewing. So I asked you what your favorite drink is right now, and you answered Olipop, strawberry vanilla. Does this bring up any memories for you?
Yeah, they used to be my competitor when I was doing more beverage.
I love that.
Now I drink them because I'm like, it is good,
Hey, if you can't beat them, join them. I asked you what the first song you thought of that elicited a memory for you, and you said "Row, row, row your boat." What is that memory?
It's combined with a current memory and an old memory, but my dad would, I bathe in a tub with my brother. We were kids,
Yeah.
and my dad and mom would sing that song to us when we were kids, and they would bathe us. And I always remember that song because it just sounded like a typical song, right? But then recently, Devon sang that song, and she had a different interpretation, which is, you really should row. This is what she said.
Devon's Kevin's fiance.
Yes, my fiance said to me, what I love about this song, she said, is that this is like life, and I just want to remind you, Kevin, as we go on our new journey together, that we should row our boat gently down the stream, because at the end of the day, life is really just a dream. Wow. And that hit me so hard. I was like, wait, that's what that song was about?
What a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
What a beautiful
Just thinks
sentiment.
we
I
should
love
row
your
through
love.
life more gently.
I love your love. You guys are beautiful together. You are, before we continue the rapid questions, you have one brother. Are you older or younger?
I'm the oldest brother.
You're
Yeah,
the oldest
of
brother?
one other.
And what does he do?
So he's in the car business. Never got into cars. Don't even own a car. Very ironic.
No, I just always think it's interesting how siblings under one roof form and how differently they form.
Yeah,
Right.
he's a golden child. Like, he took part in my dad's business, got into cars, has 3 beautiful kids, a wife, house, everything. He is like the example.
Well, as a rebel myself, there always has to be one rebel in the bunch. When I say the word home, what do you think of?
I'm still trying to find home. I think that's why I keep creating.
I love that. When I say the word heaven, what do you think of?
Oh, heaven is on earth.
What about the word hell?
Hell is in my mind.
What is the food that you find most comforting? I'm smiling with a big smile because the dinners that we share. What is the food that you find the most comforting?
It's actually, but it feels so bad when I have it now these days, but it's my mom's cooking. She makes mac and cheese, like the best I've ever had, along with some crab cakes. Just some good comfort food for Christmas.
I love that it's your mom's
Yeah.
food. That makes a lot of sense to me. Mine is my mom's rotis and cabbage. You'll have to come over someday. Okay. What sound makes you smile?
Oh, man, I know so many sounds that don't make me smile, like babies on an airplane. What sounds make me smile? Ching right now.
You know, you were the second person to say that
Yeah,
today.
ching.
I love that.
I like that.
How do you define love?
Love is still choosing to love somebody even when you don't feel it.
How do you define success?
Success is freedom for me. To be able to do the things that I want, create with the people I want, whenever I want.
How do you define failure?
Failure is actually giving up on it without learning anything from
Do you believe in magic?
it. Of course I believe in magic. I play
Yes!
Magic the Gathering. I like the Magic Castle. My first magic trick I learned in 2nd grade. It still gets people every time.
Oh, we should talk about that some
Yeah.
other time. I was a magician too in 2nd grade. Second chances?
I totally believe in second chances, but I don't believe in third.
Love at first sight.
Lust in first sight.
Without considering time, ability, or money as an obstacle, what is the one thing you've always wanted to do or learn?
Okay. I think my dream's about to come true.
Yes.
But the one thing I've always dreamt about was always being invited to come to Comic-Con and be like a hero or something. Do like the whole like signings and panels and stuff like that. So I think I'm gonna have a version of it pretty soon. But
Oh, I want a version of it. Someone write it in comic book character quickly. What would you like, or who would you like to create a story about or for in the future?
about or for in the future. Okay, well I hope this isn't taking too much of my idea away, but I always dreamt about okay, let's just say I passed away. I always wanted to put in my will that this sounds a little dark and morbid. You can choose to cut this out if you want. But I wanted my ashes to be turned into ink in comic books and printed with my life story and biography as a superhero.
That's amazing.
Always wanted that.
I love that. What word best describes you as a storyteller?
Man, it's supposed to. I mean, honest is just the one that I know.
What inspires or drives you?
Ooh, when people don't do what I want. I know it sounds true. It's true though. It always comes from like wanting something, not getting it, and then I just do it. I mean, it started from being like an actor to beverage to comic books. Like, oh, I wanted to be a comic book hero. Oh, okay, fine. I'm just gonna create it. So I do that because somebody didn't do what I wanted.
And our last question. What's your favorite story?
My favorite story, Princess Bride.
Yes.
Still my favorite story to this day.
Yep, I get that. The magic, the wonderment, the sexual awakening,
Giants and swords.
the chastity belts.
Yeah. Well,
We need a new Princess Bride, guys.
I think so too.
Kevin, thank you so much for being with us here on Storyteller Studio.
Thanks for having me. Thanks.
All you lovers and friends, come in, come in. Have a seat at the head and have some bread.